Welcome to Toy Polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from Toy Polloi, and today we're going to be revisiting one of the very early restorations that I filmed on this channel, and that is restoring a vintage Kenner 1975 Steve Austin, the $6 Million Man. Now this was a very early project that I filmed way back at the start of Toy Polloi, so this must be at least seven or so years old, and it's one that I really enjoyed doing, and really one of the ones that sort of got me started in filming some sort of bigger restorations on this channel. And I thought it would be quite a nice idea to sort of take a look back at that project and restore another Steve Austin figure and see if there was anything I would do differently all these years later. So in front of me here is the actual Steve Austin that I repaired all those years back, and as you can see he's still looking really quite nice. I don't think I've done a great deal to him over the years. I think I may have changed some of his outfit because I got a sort of better quality version of his outfit with less damage to it. And I did finally find the engine block that I was missing sort of all those years back, so I managed to sort of finally complete this figure. But otherwise since then he has been sitting on my shelf, and he's a really nice figure. He's one of those ones that I remember playing with as a child, so it was a nice thing to sort of get back into my collection. And a lot of people have asked me and sort of over the years about that video, and a lot of people have watched that video. In fact, it's been a very popular one, you know, and is still watched to this day. But the people have asked me whether I'd sort of go back and do anything differently. So what I'm planning to do today is restore another Steve Austin figure and also take a look at those old videos, because actually back then when I was filming those videos I had very sort of quite amateur equipment, and the filming wasn't very good. I think I was limited in the amount of time I could film to about 10 minutes, so I had to film everything very quickly, and sort of the camera didn't focus particularly well. So now is a good time to sort of do it again and with better equipment, and as I say, see if there's anything I would do differently. On this figure I think I repaired the arm skin. The arm skin was missing, and that was done with a balloon, and I have to say I think that is one thing I will still be doing the same, because the balloons do work very nicely. I made some new socks for him. I repainted his head. I gave him a good clean. I probably repaired the outfit as well in some ways. So we'll be doing all of that again, but afresh. So in recent months I've been looking through my sort of boxes of spares to see what I have and to see if I actually had enough to start on this project. I do indeed have one of Steve Austin's arms. This is his bionic arm, and you can see that there is one chip there, but there is a chip missing. So I think one thing we're going to do today is make a new chip for him from scratch. So that was the starting of this project. I have his arm. I also have a spare version of the engine block, so that was a good bit to have. And I have a pair of shoes. These are sort of bits that are the sort of harder pieces to find with Steve Austin. His arm, one of the chips, and some shoes are probably the sort of harder pieces to find. So I thought that was a great starting point. So I've been onto eBay this week and I've purchased this, which is a one-armed Steve Austin. So I think from that we can rebuild him. So this is really my starting point on any project, getting all the pieces I need. As you can see, I don't have everything I need. I don't have the outfit, I don't have the socks, and I don't have one chip, but on the whole I have everything that I think I can do to sort of get the ball rolling. And as I film this project I will find the sort of missing parts. So let's take a sort of closer look at these bits just to see if there's anything that needs work on them. First up, the engine block. This was one that I was given a while back. It is pretty dirty, so that will need a good clean, but overall everything is on there. I don't think there's anything broken on it. Sometimes these handles snap off, and this one looks in reasonable condition, so I think we'll just give that a good clean. The shoes, there are no tears as far as I can see in this. They're a bit dirty, and it looks like there's some sort of paint or something. That may just be sort of paint from when it was made on that one, but really they just need a good clean as well. A bit filthy, but the fact they don't have any tears or splits in them is quite good. They're not a matching pair. I don't think they're quite the same colour, but overall they're not too bad at all. As I say, we have his arm, and that's in fairly good condition. The hands tend to always be a bit worn because when you push the engine block onto it, it sort of scratches them a bit, but yeah, that's not too bad. It is missing the lower chip and the arm skin, so we will be replacing that. And I think because the lower arm chip is the one that's much harder to find. The top one seems to always stay on. I think that's because to get that out you had to roll the arm skin right up to the top, whereas this lower one, it was much easier to roll the skin back and that chip would fall out. It often as well is quite a loose chip. So yeah, we'll make one of those from scratch. I'm going to have a go at casting using some resin. I think it will be quite good fun. So again, that just needs a bit of a clean. And this is the one I just picked up off eBay. I think I paid £10 for it plus some postage. It's actually not in too bad condition. I was hoping it would be a little bit worse condition because it's always more fun if they're sort of more damaged. There's a few paint chips on the hair there, so we can touch those up, and then just a little bit of dirt and grime. Otherwise though, in really quite good condition, which as I say is a little bit disappointing, but we can still get him fixed up. So first thing to do is actually just going to give everything a good clean. So I'm going to fill my sink with some hot soapy water and use a toothbrush to clean all of the surfaces. There are a few smaller marks on his legs, sort of paint marks and that, which I'll use a bit of lighter fluid to get rid of. You can see there's a few on the back there, but really hot soapy water and a good clean. I think with Steve Austin I'm not going to submerge him in water. I don't think there are any metal pieces inside him, but I don't want the body to fill up with water, so I'm just going to use a toothbrush and basically put that onto the surface of him and not submerge him. So let's get him cleaned up. As I say many times, a good clean really always makes a great difference to the toy. It just makes him look a whole lot fresher, and using a toothbrush I was able to get most of it off. I did use a magic eraser on the shoes because there was quite a lot of dirt around the sort of the white stripe on the bottom of it, and that's really helped. So these shoes are actually starting to look like a matching pair, and yeah, I think they're looking pretty good. Everything else has cleaned up very nicely. That was just particularly dirty, so getting the grime off that, it almost looks like a brand new engine block. And this eBay purchase is really rather good condition. I'm still amazed at how good it was. I was expecting it to be a lot sort of rougher. So yeah, the overall effect on the main body is really nice. Now we can start working on the arm. So the first thing we're going to do is deal with the missing arm skin. Now the arm skins on these do perish over the years. There should be a sort of latex rubber skin that you can roll back to reveal the bionic chips, and that just degrades. All those sorts of old bits of rubber have a lifetime and a sort of a lifespan, and after a while it will just turn brittle and fall off. So they are always missing on these. Now if you go onto eBay, there are lots of people selling replacement ones, and it's really a bit of a con that they sell them for quite a lot of money, and it's actually a very simple thing. So I'm going to tell you again today what it is that you need to do. And what you've got to do is buy a balloon. These are just beige or blush coloured balloons. They're a particular size, and I actually kept the note from when I bought this. So you can see here, this is a pack that I bought way back. So the details you need to know are the size is 350Q, so 350Q, and the colour is blush. And I bought a whole pack of these for £3.20 or £3.32 it says there. And I've just had a quick look on eBay, and they're still for sale today. So 7 years later you can still buy them. This is the exact ones, and these are size 350Q in the colour blush, and so yeah, it's still available. If you look on eBay, people are selling these for sort of like £2 or £3 each as a replacement skin, but you can actually buy an entire bag of them for very little money. So if you want to do a few of these sort of restorations, pick up a bag and don't pay these sort of over exorbitant prices people are sort of listing for on eBay. It's a bit of a con. It is just a balloon. So let's make a new arm skin from this balloon. So what you do is just take one of these balloons, measure the sort of length of the arm. You can see that this is the rounded end of the balloon, so the sort of tip of it. I'm going to put that at the shoulder, go down to about where the wrist is, so about that long, and we cut a small piece off, which is this, and then then you cut a small hole in the end of it, because that's where you've got to insert the hand through and thread it on. Now the threading on process is a little bit hard and it does take a bit of time to do. You may find you need some talcum powder to help sort of roll the skin on, but it is possible. I've done this many times. Just have a go. The first one, chances are you will rip the balloon just because you're sort of learning the process, so that's why it's always worth buying a few balloons just so that you've got a few spare. But really you just sort of push on and do the process. It takes, you know, 5 to 10 minutes. The first one will take you longer, and you may find you curse along the way a bit because it does take as I say, a little bit of practice to get it done. But let's get this balloon on and then we'll have the replacement skin on Steve Austin's arm. And there you go, that took a total of 5.5 minutes. I've sped up the footage previously just so you can see the whole process, but the end result is it does look really quite nice, and we can now roll this skin up like you would have done for the original and get to access all of the chips all the way up the arm. I've done one other thing on this arm in the meantime, which is at the top you quite often get cracks where it joins onto the body, so you'll get a crack here and a crack here. All I've done is brushed a bit of plastic weld on the inside and allowed capillary action to pull it into these cracks to fuse those back together, and it seems to work really well. You can see there is no longer any way that I can sort of open it up. It's actually really firmly held together, so if there are cracks in the top of the arms, just a bit of plastic weld pushed in there, and then by the time you put the skin over the top of it, you can't see that that is been fixed at all. Now we need to move on to the missing bionic arm chips.
Toy Polloi.
Now with the missing lower arm bionic chip, I thought I would try something new, which was to have a go casting one in resin. I've seen other people do this and thought it would be a fun thing to learn, and sort of this would be an ideal opportunity to give it a go. The upper arm chips always seem to be much easier to find. I think that's because quite often people didn't roll the arm skin back all the way, and so these chips are often still stuck in place, but these lower ones, which are a little bit smaller, are often missing. And in fact I do have one in my other sort of Steve Austin doll, so I'm going to be using that as the basis to make the new one. The first thing we've got to do is actually make a mold of it, and I'm going to be doing that using blue stuff. In fact I already have done that. Blue stuff is a thermoplastic, so you put it into hot water, it softens, and you can then make all sorts of molds and shapes out of it. I've shown it quite a few times on my channel and it does work really well, and I thought it would be an ideal thing to do for making the mold of this. So I've done that, and here is the mold. In fact all the pieces are still stuck in the mold. Now what I've actually done is I've got a flat piece of plastic, and then underneath that is the chip, because what I want is a sort of flat surface on the back, so when I pour the resin in I know where the sort of the back of it is and how level it's going to be. And I thought if I did that just with the thermoplastic it would be a bit sort of messy, so by putting another piece of plastic behind the chip it should give me a nice flat surface. So if we take this out we'll see what the mold looks like. So there you can see that is the flat piece of plastic where it's got a bit of paint on it, but you can see the idea. Basically there's the chip. When I take that chip out, we'll then be able to pour resin into that area, and as long as it goes up to this sort of the flatness of that surface, I should get quite a nice finish to the chip. So let's just take this chip out as well. And there we go. So that's quite a nice looking cast. It looks quite smooth. I can't see any sort of issues with that. That is the chip we are casting. So I'm going to be casting this in clear resin. Now I have only done this once before off camera as a quick test, and the results were pretty pleasing. So I'm hoping we can do this again. But yeah, let's start the process. The first thing though was to get this mould, and yeah, I think that looks quite nice. It's quite neat, and yeah, it's a good starting point. So this is the resin I'm using. I bought this off eBay. It's a 2-part resin. You basically mix it 2 to 1. So we have the resin and we have the hardener here. So we've got 100 grams of the resin and 50 grams of the hardener. So we put 2 lots of this into 1 lot of that. I only need a very small amount of this. You can measure it. It comes with a full set of instructions, which I've got here, and it tells you how to mix it. So it's a sort of 2 to 1 ratio, and it's got it in various weights, but we're really going to be mixing a very small amount of it. So I'm actually going to be doing this by eye. I'm just going to sort of eye up 2 to 1 is a ratio in here. I've made a second mould as well, because I happen to have some more glue stuff. So I've made a second version of the mould, so we can do 2 at one time. This takes 24 hours to set, so you've got to be very patient, but yeah, I think it should work quite nicely, and judging by my tests it will. So I'll just put these in pots so that I can get them nice and level. I'm now going to do the 2 to 1 ratio, mix it up with a screwdriver and very carefully pour it into these moulds, and then wait. Now that is my guess of a 2 to 1 ratio. I'm sure you could do this a lot more scientifically, but I know my scales don't measure these small amounts, and I think I just have to guess with it. Last time I did this, it worked really quite well, and I'm just hopeful. If it doesn't, I'll mix this again. As you can see, I only need a very tiny amount of it. I think that is about a 2 to 1 ratio. I've now given that a pretty good mix. There's a few little bubbles in it. This didn't seem to be a problem last time. Over the 24 hours of sort of letting it set, the bubbles just disappeared. They floated to the top. As I say, these are very small things that we're casting. Yeah, we'll just sort of see how that goes. But you can see there's a few bubbles in there. I don't think it will matter. Now is the tricky bit. I'm going to try and get these nice and level, because we obviously want this to be quite level. Maybe that's not the right dish to put that in. Let's try a different one. Yeah, that one's better. I'm just using those dishes just to make sure everything is level. I'm now going to very carefully pour this into the mould. I actually don't want it to sort of spread out too much, so I'm going to try and keep it just in that middle piece, but we'll see how we can get on. I'd rather that we had a nice flat surface on the back that didn't need filing or sanding or anything like that, so let's just try. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think that looks quite nice. They certainly have sort of filled up to the edge. They're not slipping over the sides at all. So I'm now just going to leave those. As I say, this takes 24 hours. I've just got to be patient. I'm going to put these to the side, do something else, and we'll come back and see what they look like tomorrow. It's now a day later and everything looks like it has set quite nicely. I can feel that the resin has actually set pretty solidly. Both of them look like they've worked. So really the only thing to do is to pop these out of the mould and see what they look like. So you can see that one pops out quite easily. Just pull that out. Well, that doesn't look too bad at all. There's a few little areas around the edge I can see where we need to sort of trim off some of the resin, but the overall effect looks really quite nice. I don't think it will fit quite snugly in there at the moment, just because we need to trim off some of the resin, but it's really very clear. There's not a sign of a bubble in that one, so yeah, I'm quite pleased with that. Let's look at this one. Just push that one out as well. There we go. And again, a lovely clear cast. That's looking very good. Again, a few little sort of errors on the edges of it, but nothing I don't think we can't sort of solve with a bit of filing. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get some files out. I'll trim these edges down and sort of file them a bit, and yeah, we'll see if we can get that one to fit. The surface I didn't want to sort of do any filing to was the top surface and the bottom surface, because I'm going to stick something on the bottom, so you want that as nice and flat as possible, and those look really very good. So yeah, let's do a bit of filing and see if we can get that to fit in the slot there. With just a small amount of filing around the edges, I've actually made both of these chips now fit quite snugly into Steve Austin's arms. You can see that one fits really very nicely. The other one is a little bit too thick. I think I possibly put too much resin in it. So when we push this into the arm, you can see it's raised up slightly. And because I don't want to sand the bottom of this, it's going to be a little bit proud. But the overall effect is really very good. You can see that this is a very nice clear cast. If I bring in the original one here, you can see it does match quite nicely. So I'm very happy with how that has worked. But we're still missing one thing, which is that all of this, the artwork on the back of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some images of these original chips into Photoshop and make myself a new version of this artwork that we can then attach onto the back of this chip and put that in place. So let's make that artwork. Right, well, that didn't take too much time. As you can see here, I printed out a few of them onto a bit of paper. I've actually just done a quick test, which is why there's one missing here. This is just normal printer paper. There's nothing special about it, because to attach this to the back of the little resin cast that we've made, we've got to stick it on somehow. And so the actual paper part doesn't need to be anything particular. We're going to be sticking this over the top like that, as you can see. So I'm going to bring in an original chip here, just so I know which way round this artwork goes. You can see there's all sorts of little dials and bits, and the dial needs to be on sort of the bottom right hand corner. If we turn that around, it needs to be that way round. I think that should work really quite well. So how are we going to stick these onto this piece of resin that we've cast? And the answer is double-sided tape. You can buy double-sided tape from most places. I picked this up off eBay, I think, but many craft shops and sort of news agents will sell something like this. So I'm going to just go cut off a strip of double-sided tape like that. And I'm actually going to stick it right over the top of this artwork, so we can't see it anymore. So if I stick it like that, and then I can take the backing of the tape off, and you can see that the tape is so clear that you can actually see the artwork through it. So if I get my new little resin cast and carefully line this up over the top of the artwork, like so, and we'll push that down. I can then just take my knife and cut around the edge of this. And there we go. What we should be left with is a chip now with the artwork in the background, and it doesn't look too bad at all. If we compare that to the original one, you can see that's a pretty good recreation of the chip. The PDF file for this is going to be available on toypolloi.com for free, so go and grab that there if you want to do this exact same thing. But let's try this chip in Steve Austin's arm. You can see, look at that, really very convincing indeed. And if we fold the skin down, you can see it's hidden and fits perfectly. So it's only not the easiest of things to do, but I didn't find this resin casting too much trouble. I just bought the cheapest sort of craft resin that I could find on eBay. There are lots of different ones, so I don't really know much about which ones are best and which ones are the worst. I just grabbed what was the cheapest. There are plenty of videos online of other people doing casting, so I would recommend watching a few of those to see if they have any recommendations. But for me, this cheap resin has really worked very nicely, and I've ended up with a really nice looking arm chip that fits snugly in Steve Austin's arm. So yeah, that's a very satisfying little project. We can now put this arm back onto the Steve Austin doll, and that's just a case of clipping it in place. So this should clip onto the arm peg like that, and it's back on and attached. Now, one thing I often see with these $6 million man dolls is people say that the arm doesn't work. When you press the button on the back, his arm doesn't move, and the reason for this is because people don't actually know how to use the doll properly. What you've got to do to make the arm work is actually turn his head to look at the arm. If you do that and then press the button, you can see that it now works properly. If we turn it away again, the arm no longer moves and you can move it freely. So if you're looking at these on eBay, quite often people will say the arm function doesn't work, and most often it does work. All that's happening is they haven't turned the head to look at the arm, and there you go, it is working. Now we come on to sort of painting and touching up the hair and eyebrows on these $6 million man dolls. And I've gone back to my original videos again just to see what colours I used and just to see if I would use the same again now. In the original videos I used some Humbrol acrylics, this number here, which is RC402, mixed with a little bit of black and a little bit of red, and it did produce a very good colour. I've actually got a few different paints since then, so I'm going to do a slightly different mix today. The basis was actually going to be this one, which is a number 70 Humbrol, which I think is a slightly more sort of chocolatey brown colour, and I think just matches the dolls that I have here better. Sometimes the dolls have different shades of colour on their hair, so there's never going to be a perfect match, but for today I'm going to be using Humbrol number 70. I've also mixed in a tiny amount of this, which is the men colour red brown, and this is number MC237. Normally I'd buy Vallejo or Humbrol paints, but for some reason I have this one in my sort of toolbox, and it's a slightly sort of reddier colour. You can see here this is the colour, it's a little bit reddier, so a mixture of that with the number 70, and I managed to get a paint colour that really does match quite nicely. So I'm actually going to repaint some of the hair that I painted on my original one, just so that it's a bit of a closer match. I can see already that's covering up quite nicely. But these are matte paints, so once I'm done I'm actually going to add a top coat onto it, which is going to be this satin varnish. Again, this is a Vallejo colour, this is number 70.522, and that will just give it the same sort of mildly shiny finish that the original paint had. But initially I'm just going to touch up the paint that's damaged. This is my figure that I painted all those years ago. I'm just going to sort of repaint some parts of it because I think the colour is a slightly better match, and then I'm going to just touch up the eyebrows on this new one. I think that's slightly redder the hair, so I might have to put a little bit of red in that, but the overall effect will be pretty much the same. Now we come on to Steve Austin's outfit, and at the start of this video I had one that was in sort of fairly sort of bad state, and since then I have now got a whole load in a very bad state, because very kindly Lawrence from Toy Planet UK sent me a big bag of outfits that he has been storing over the last sort of 25-30 years. He says these are outfits that he can't sell because they're in too bad condition. He very kindly sent me a whole selection of them, so I've been going through those outfits, making repairs. They're all in a sort of, as he says, of quite a sort of rough state, but they're perfectly good for the sort of figures that I'm building here, because as you know I'm quite a wabby-sabby toy collector, so things don't have to be perfect. So I've made a whole load of repairs to these outfits and sewn up the bits that have sort of got holes in and where the seams have come apart, and I've ended up with a few here that are in pretty reasonable condition. Now some of them are missing the little emblem that goes on the front of the outfit, and if we go back to my original video you'll have seen that I actually made new emblems by getting some iron-on transfer paper paper and ironing that onto some white cotton material and then sticking that onto the outfits, and ended up with some really quite nice little logos. In fact, I have a couple left here from that very video. So these are the ones that I made all those years back, and you can see that doesn't look too bad at all. And I was going to use these again today, but actually since filming that video, which is, as I say, it's about 8 years ago, I've found some new material, which is this, which is actually self-adhesive printable fabric. So this is A4 sheets of paper that you can stick in your printer and you can print directly on it, and what you end up with is ones that look like this. So these are those same emblems, the ones that I ironed on previously, but these are now printed directly onto fabric-y paper, and this has a sticky backing. So I'm actually going to be using those today. You can see the difference. They're a little bit brighter, and they do look really quite nice. They match the original sort of pretty closely. You can see there's that really sort of beaten up original one. I think my logo doesn't look too bad at all. The file to make these is still available on toypolloi.com. That's been available for all these years, and it's had thousands and thousands of downloads. There's obviously a lot of people who have been repairing their Steve Austins using it. So anyway, here are some of those. I've now cut them out. These are sticky backed, as I say, so all I've got to do is peel off the backing and we can stick these directly onto the outfits. So you can actually see there's a little mark there where the original emblem would have been, and I'm just going to stick that over the top. And that looks really quite nice. So I've got a few of those to do because I've got a few of these outfits, so I might as well stick some on. But we've ended up with quite a nice looking emblem there. And these outfits, although not perfect, will certainly do the job. So I've now got a uniform for Steve to wear. The last thing we need is a pair of white socks. Now, you can buy some reproductions of these. People sell a few different sorts on eBay, but I'm going to go back exactly to what I did in the very first video, and that is use some white gloves. Now, you can buy these white gloves for less than a couple of pounds for a pair of gloves, and out of them you can actually get a few good pairs of socks by just cutting the fingers off. So you can see these gloves I've already used for a couple of pairs of socks on some different Steve Austin dolls, and I'm going to do exactly the same today. In my original video, Mrs. Toy Polloi helped me by sort of sewing them neatly, but you don't actually need to do anything that great with them. Basically, take the gloves and cut the fingers off. So I'm just going to try and cut this neatly so that the top of it is quite square. Like so, and there you go, you have one sock. This just needs to slot over his foot and it will do the job. The original socks are made in much the same way, so there's no point in sort of doing too much to them. They are all hidden by the time you've got his outfit on, because obviously he's wearing a pair of trainers, and the rest of this gets hidden by the trouser leg. So they look a little bit baggy, but they really do the job, and they are incredibly cheap to make. So I'm going to stick with that. But as I say, you can get replacement ones on eBay, which I think are going to be made much the same way. So we've now got everything we need to get this Steve Austin doll dressed. I'm going to put all the outfit on and we'll take a look at him. One final thing I wanted to do with this restoration is get a reproduction box to put Steve Austin in. So I've actually bought a box from a place I've never bought from before, which is a website called 20th Century Box. They make quite a few replacement boxes for various toys, and on their site they do have a few different versions for Steve Austin, the $6 Million Man. Now, I bought the UK version of the box. The US version had a window on it so you could see the figure. The UK version is just a box, a lot more like how Action Man was packaged. And I thought, as I'm sort of in the UK, it would be nice to have the UK version of the box. So it has arrived. It looks like it's well packed. Let's open this up and see what it looks like. Right, it was really well packed, but I managed to get into it. So here you can see this is who it's made by. 20th Century Box. I will put a link to their website at the bottom of this video, but now let's take a closer look at the box itself. So here is the box. As you can see, it doesn't look too bad. It's a little bit washed out, I'm going to say. I don't think the colours are quite what they should be. It's a bit too sort of vibrantly pink, and the blacks aren't black enough for my liking, but the overall effect is quite nice. It's been professionally printed, so it's you know, on pretty good stock card. I can't see any sort of information that says this is a reproduction box. I generally prefer it if they do say that on them, but this one doesn't appear to. If we open it up, there is a mounting card inside, so this is the card that the figure would have been tied onto with some sort of little cable ties or something like that. I don't think it comes with any cable ties for you to do that. The ones I bought previously for Star Wars toys from Replicator Boxes and Inserts, he always provides the ties and sort of other bits that you can attach the figures to the card. So it's a little bit of a shame that that's not in there, but the overall effect is good, and it will certainly look quite nice when I come to display my figure next to this box. This box cost £20. The postage was free in the UK. I think the ones with the windows are slightly more expensive. So yeah, for that I'm pretty happy. I just think it would be nice if it actually said reproduction on it somewhere, and the colours to me look a little bit muted, but the overall effect is really quite nice. And here is the finished $6 million man. I think he's looking really great. This has been a really fun project to sort of revisit, because it's nice to be able to go back and see if the ideas that I came up with 8 years ago are the same things that I would use today, and it turns out that most of them are. There are a few things that I've updated, like the badge on the shirt. I think the new method using the printable fabric is actually a much easier way of doing it, and I've learnt a new skill of casting resin to make some new bionic chips that go inside his arm. So that's been a really fun part of this project. And I think now that I've done this, I will probably do some more $6 million man projects, because I do have the remains of the bionic transport and repair station, and I think that would be quite a fun one to fix up, because it's another toy that I remember playing with as a child, and I think a lot of people really remember that one quite vividly. So I think that will be next on the list of projects I need to do. I've got the bare bones of it, but as you can see, I'm missing quite a few parts. I'm going to try and track those down over the next few months, and that will be put on my future projects list. Now, I do need to say a massive thank you to a few people in this video. First up to Lawrence from Toy Planet UK, who very kindly sent me all of those damaged $6 million man outfits. Those are a godsend to a project like this, because I've been able to actually dress him fully. So do check out his Facebook page. I'll put a link to that in the description. I also need to say a big thank you to Nick and Jackson, who helped provide a few parts. They gave me the arm that was the inspiration for starting this whole project again, so thanks to those guys. And also I'll give a mention to 20th Century Box, who I bought the box off, and as you can see, actually having these two things together, it does display really nicely, so it's a nice way of finishing this project. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to check out some of the other $6 million man videos that I recorded many years ago, because you'll learn some different tips and tricks in those. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Toy Polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow Toy Polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.